What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Swishlight Garage. Today, guys, I'm back at it on the EG Coupe. Still trying to get this thing as a daily. If you guys seen some of my previous videos, I've been doing quite a bit of things just to have this running proper and have it as a reliable car. I believe the last thing I need to do is take care of the lower control arms. I showed you guys that the bushing basically on the lower control arms is super blown out and there's a lot of movement in the wheel. Whenever I'm driving, that wheel is just moving, it's chirping, and it's really not safe to be driving like that. So for this video, I'm going to show you guys how to take off your lower control arms as well as the compliance bushing, that whole section, and then I'll be installing some other lower control arms. They're not new. I got them off of my Del Sol. For now, they'll get me on the road and they'll serve its purpose. Later on, I'll be replacing all the bushings, ball joints, and everything like that. For now, I just need to get going and swap it out with my Prelude since it's burning oil at this moment. Here's the other lower control arm I took off from the Del Sol. The compliance bushing doesn't look too bad from what I could see. I didn't take it apart. But the lower control arms, they are obviously used. You know, they're not in the best condition, but they'll at least get me on the road. They're better than what it currently has. Whenever I take off the parts off of the EG Coupe, I'll be able to work on those separately and have those ready so I could swap these out eventually. Now, of course, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take off the wheel, get it jacked up, put it on some jack stands, make sure it's safe and high enough to start working on it. Very cool. So the car is jacked up and it's nice and safe to work on. First thing I'm going to do is loosen up the sway bar on both sides. So we're going to take off that nut and then take it off on the other side as well, just to get it nice and loose and independent from each other. And then after that, I'm going to loosen up the suspension fork. I'm going to start on the passenger side first. Alright, so here on the driver's side, I'm going to get this sway bar end link off. I want to put some WD-40 since there's a lot of dirt on it. I'm going to get the 12 nut that's in between it, and got a breaker bar with another 12. I'm going to loosen it up. Alright, so that is loose. I just loosened the bottom one as well just so I could easily get it off if I want to. I'm going to loosen up the suspension fork here. It's going to be a 17 on both ends. You got to hold it from spinning. On one end I'm going to use a breaker bar since it's kind of tight, and use a ratchet on the other. So now that is loose, I'm going to work on the lower ball joint and get that disconnected from the knuckle. You got to take off the cotter pin. So the cotter pin is out, that was kind of tight, and this lower ball joint is going to be a 17 as well. I have this lower ball joint tool to separate it, and I gotta get it inside, and this will push on the stud for that ball joint. I kind of had to push it up in there. And usually on these tools, honestly, you kind of got to grind it down for the Hondas since they're kind of tight. But I think this should work. So now I just got to tighten up this bolt and then it should separate it from that lower ball joint. So there it goes. Separated that lower ball joint, and after that you're able to lift up the knuckle and just move it out of place. After you get a weight off of the knuckle, off of the lower control arm, you'll be able to get that lower bolt out pretty easy. And now what I'm going to do is loosen up the bolts in front for the lower control arm, and then I'll start working on that compliance bushing in the back. Here on the front, going to have the bolts for the lower control arm. Mainly got to get this one over here that connects it to the subframe. Bolt connecting to the subframe is 17. There's that bolt for the lower control arm. So now the control arm is loose in the front. I gotta work on the rear here at the compliance bushing. First thing I gotta do is loosen up the sway bar. Get that loose because that's gonna allow the compliance bushing, once it's loose, to fully come out. Two bolts that it has here are 12. The sway bar is lowered and won't have a problem getting out this arm and this bushing. The 3 bolts that hold it on, there's a bolt right here and then 2 bolts that you can see right there. They're going to be a 19. They're going to be pretty tight, so I do have a breaker bar on it. There's one bolt right there. Alright, so here's the arm, and the main issue was that bushing right there for the lower control arm. You could tell it's all torn up, and mine are just a tiny bit better. It should be able to at least keep it in place until I'm able to buy the new bushings and do all that work to it. But the compliance bushing back here doesn't look bad from what I can see. The bushing for the suspension fork right there is cracked a little bit, but really just this one right here, you can see how easy I'm able to move it. Driver's side, I'm going to try to go a little bit faster but still show you guys everything, the process of the removal, and hopefully I don't have any problems with any of those bolts being stuck. Let's hope this side should take a lot less time and be easier. So let's get it. Here's the driver's side control arm, and this bushing is the main one that is having the issue. You can see it moves real easy, causing a lot of movement. And this other bushing is torn all around, but doesn't seem that bad. It's still holding on. I didn't have any issues with any of the bolts, and that was a whole lot faster. I'm just going to take a little bit of time and clean up down here just where the bolts go on to hold the lower control arm, and clean up all that grease a little bit. And after I do that, I'll get on to putting the used control arms on. So I just cleaned up a little bit. I had to stop myself because on this car there's just so much dirt and grease everywhere. It's going to take a lot to really clean it up, but I really would need a power washer. So just stop myself from getting in too deep because it's definitely not going to happen here. So now I'm going to start the installation. Start on the passenger side here and put in the lower control arm with the compliance bushing and arm. I'll put back on the bushing for the sway bar, spray a little bit of silicone grease on there. Loosely put everything on before tightening because everything kind of does move, and I gotta have the front suspension under load before tightening the bolts, torquing them down. And I really want to be careful on it, especially with these bushings, because I don't want to rip them and then have the same problem happen. I want them to last me just a little bit. So let me get started on that driver's side and just reinstalling everything back in. So the front lower control arms on the driver and the passenger side, everything is on. All the bolts are on. The bolts aren't tightened up yet. I'm about to go through everything and torque everything down to the specs it should be at. On both sides, I'm going to make sure that the sway bar bracket here is tightened down, and that's going to be to 16 foot-pounds. So that's just going to be hand tight really. You just want to give it a little tug, and that should be about 16 foot-pounds. And also on the sway bar end link here, it's going to be to 16 foot-pounds. I'll tighten that as well. And here on the passenger, now I'm going to get the bolts for the front lower control arm, but I gotta put load on the suspension, so I'm going to lift the suspension till it starts to lift the car off of the jack here. From the torque specs I could find, for sure this bolt to the subframe and the bolt for the suspension fork are at 47 foot-pounds. I couldn't really find information on these two other bolts, so I'm going to put them at 47 foot-pounds as well. When I took them off, I would say they were about that tight, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up. And the reason why you want load on suspension is just so whenever you lower the car, the bushings aren't going to start twisting, because if you tighten it when the suspension is down and then the car sits on the ground, the bushings are just going to twist and then they're going to possibly rip. So especially with some used control arms, I don't want that to happen. That's tightened up. The lower ball joint here is going to be tightened to 36 foot-pounds to 43 foot-pounds, and the reason why it varies is because you got to get the cotter pin in through the castle nut to lock it in. This lower ball joint is just spinning whenever I try to tighten it, so I'm going to wait till I put the wheel on the car and get it on the ground and try to get that lower ball joint stuck in there so I could tighten it without it spinning. For now, I'm going to move on to the arm on the back side with the compliance bushing. Now I'm going to tighten up the 3 bolts I took off for the compliance bushing here. They're 19 and they're going to be tightened down to 66 foot-pounds. Everything is tightened up on this side except that lower ball joint, like I said. Right now I'm going to go ahead and torque everything down on that passenger side. All the bolts are torqued down. I'm going to put the wheel on, put on the lug nuts, and then I'll do a little shake test. If you guys saw the video from before, you could see the lower control arm moving. noise you're going to hear is coming from the tie rods, but if you see the lower control arm, there's no movement. I set the car down, had to mess with the lower control arm a little bit to tighten up that lower ball joint on the driver's side, but now everything is tightened up. I still got to mess with the tie rods a little bit since I mess with the suspension. That messes with the alignment. I'm going to test drive it right now, see how the steering is. So I'm going to do the test drive and then adjust it, and until I finally have it steering straight. So it's just kind of eyeballing it and just doing it off of feel, and for me that's good enough for now. Alright, so it did take a little bit of time, but finally I got the steering wheel straight. After I fixed the alignment, I took the car a little bit further than I have ever took it so far, and honestly I don't feel any issues that really concern me as far as this car being a daily. So now I think it is officially ready, so I'm gonna start using it. And so next video I'm gonna show you guys, I'm gonna be cleaning up the car, take care of a lot of the little things on here, and just have a real clean Civic coupe. I really like this body style, the coupe and the hatchback honestly, and the sedans now are starting to grow on me, and so that might be something in the near future I might get. But as far as now, I'm excited to drive something different. Time to put the Prelude away. If you guys seen before, I told you that it has a blown head gasket on the number 4 cylinder, and as well whenever I'm idling or a fresh startup, it'll blow out some smoke. So that right there is a reason for me not to drive the car, and as well there's brake fluid coming out of the ABS unit. So there's quite a few things I need to take care of before I'll feel comfortable driving this car again. As far as this video, this is going to be it. Removing and installing the lower control arms along with that compliance bushing and arm back there. In the future I am going to change out those OEM bushings and probably put some hardened rubber bushings and just have everything feeling real nice and tight. For now I'm just trying to get it on the road. As always guys, you could comment down below if you have any questions, and like this video if you got some helpful information. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I have tons of other projects. If you look on my playlist, I've organized all the projects on my channel, so if you click on the playlist you could see all the projects I have, and click on the playlist and start watching all the videos in order. So go ahead and check that on out guys. So as for this video, this is going to do it for me. I'm going to have to catch you on the next one, player.